Warning. This game contains content that might not be suitable for most audiences. Viewers' discretion is advised. A few days ago, you had inherited the house that once belonged to your parents when they were alive. It was a small, lovely, pleasant house built with good memories from your childhood. Initially, you weren't sure about living there on your own. Even though you had offered your best friend to live with you, they had refused, telling you it was best not to live together. It might have seemed abrupt, but eventually you had agreed after realizing you had been depending too much on them since you managed to break up with your ex-partner. That guy who had once captured your heart so deeply, in the end, turned out to be nothing more than a jerk who hurt you both physically and mentally. After ending the relationship, he had been stalking you for a few weeks. You couldn't breathe calmly until one day, out of the blue, he vanished. He stopped trying to contact you through various phone numbers. He stopped looking for you in the apartment you once shared with your friend. He would stop creating multiple accounts to reach out to you on social media. Initially, the paranoia that he might return clung to you like a tick, but eventually, you had to accept that it was all over after weeks of complete silence from his side. You had gotten rid of him, and now you could breathe calmly in the living room of your house. And right now, you weren't alone. Go ahead, shoot your question. Kato smiled, settling into the chair across from you. He was your potential new roommate. A few hours ago, you had met over the phone, and now he was there, cheerful and pleasant. The bouquet of flowers he had brought you had placed in a vase, now adorning the kitchen. The air was filled with a scent of freshly brewed coffee, and in your hands sat your cup of the steaming concoction. Despite such a strong start, Kato was now keeping his distance, seemingly doing everything to show you that he wasn't as intense as he might have initially seemed. You appreciated that. As romantic as everything might have been, you knew you didn't really know this man, and therefore you still had to make sure you truly wanted to share your home with him. He had already expressed his agreement, but you weren't yet sure enough. So it was Kato who suggested you interview him. First of all, he interrupted your silence. I think it's obvious that I'm interested in you, so keep that in mind. If you feel that it'll make you uncomfortable, except if you tell me from now on that you don't want me to live here. If you want me to forget the idea that I could have something with you, I could also accept it. And if you want to give me a chance to win you over, it would be wonderful. If Kato didn't even spark a hint of interest in you, you would have already asked him to leave the house. I can be sassy, but can I save the game? Yes, I can. Oh, okay, I saved it. Alright, do I want to be sassy? I'm gonna play this one easy. You're very interesting, Kato. You're interesting. Almost immediately, you saw such a pure light in his eyes that for a moment, you doubted you were dealing with the same man. Before you could admire it a moment longer, Kato closed his eyes and gently shook his head while letting out a laugh. I must be doing something really well for you to think that about me. While you were pondering what to say, Kato adjusted his hair while sitting in a more firm way, making you aware again of his height despite both of you being seated. How tall are you? He almost asked unconsciously. You felt like if you didn't ask him that now, you would never get some sleep later at night. A chuckle escaped Kato's mouth. Will the answer affect if I can stay here? You shook your head no, smiling at his response. Last time I checked, 6 foot 2 inches. You are so much taller than me. You are so tall. See? I can lower things that are too high for you. He was pulling your leg, even though his tone of voice told you that his offer was honest and well-meaning. There was a tenderness evident in his gaze as he looked at you. You dropped the subject. Your curiosity had been satiated, and you felt too embarrassed to go any further. Okay, back to the main subject, the questions. He nodded, rubbing his right wrist. His hands had been one of the things that had caught your attention the most. They were large, and the scars that adorned them were of equal proportions. It was impossible not to wonder how they had gotten there, what had caused them. Kato cleared his throat as he crossed his arms on the table, hiding both hands from your field of vision. When you looked up, you noticed that he had already been paying attention to where your point of view had been for a while. His gaze told you that he didn't want a word about it. There was no threat, only a request. A kind and quite reasonable one. You felt it was time to concentrate at the task at hand. You had to get to know Kato and decide how good a roomie he might be. Also, you also wanted to just get to know him as a person. Despite having a million questions in your mind, you decided to start with the simple ones, or at least the ones you thought need to be asked, considering you would share a house with him. What do you do for a living? Do you have any hobbies? What's your morning schedule? What do you do for a living? I'm a bouncer at a pretty awful bar. He laughs, denying a little. He didn't look happy. You don't seem to like it that much. It definitely wasn't my dream job when I was a kid. I'm being honest. I quit at the drop of a hat, but you know how life is. We don't always do what we love. Why don't you leave it then? Is that why you have so many scars? What was your dream job? What was your dream job when you were little? If that wasn't it, then what was your dream job when you were a kid? Kato's eyes widened in surprise. You didn't know what to say. You almost felt like you had asked the strangest question anyone could be asked. Yeah, you don't have to answer. You apologized, not wanting to make an awkward moment. Nah, it's not that. He shook his head. It's just... I guess I hadn't really thought about it. Or maybe I did. I must have had a dream job, I guess. I don't remember it. I'm sorry, Dulzora. And you really seemed sorry. You gave him a reassuring smile, which was enough to make his expression soften. What? Whoa. Wait, okay, I want to go through every line of question there. So why don't you leave it then? Why don't you quit? If you really don't like it, I think it's enough for you to get something else. Kato looked at you, and there was something in his eyes that you couldn't describe. It was a weird mix between tenderness, surprise, and sadness. None of those emotions had anything to do with his response. I get paid well for doing something I'm good at, plus I'd have to work every night. And, I don't know, it's almost like the job was tailor-made for me. You sounded adamant about it, and you decided to drop the subject. I'm not gonna drop the subject, we're gonna keep going. Is that why you have so many scars? The question didn't leave your lips. Maybe you weren't directly asking about the scars on his hands, but indirectly. Maybe you could ask later, if things were going well. Ah, goddammit. Okay, so I want to know which bar. Which bar do you work at? It's the bar of an acquaintance, he explained calmly. I've really had no idea how much trouble it would be when he offered me the job. He told me he just needed someone who looked intimidating enough to keep people from crossing the line. But it took me a night to realize that drunk people are idiots. They have such a messed up perception of reality that they don't mind getting into a fight with someone who could beat them for a good while. You noticed that his smile didn't reach his eyes, and that he didn't answer your question. Hell damn it. Do you have any hobbies? You noticed that he didn't answer as quickly as anyone would when asked something as simple as what he liked to do. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked down at the table for a moment before looking back up at you. I'm not a very fun person. As I mentioned, I'm rather introverted, and my only hobbies consist of things that include being home and chill. The most interesting thing I do is training, but I consider it part of my job rather than a hobby. Training? That sounds great. Part of you hoped he'd do it at home. Kato's smile widened. You can join me whenever you want. His tone and the look he gave you made you blush. Well, I do want to ask again about... Do you think we could do something of that together? It seemed like every time you looked at him, his expression softened, but this was one of those occasions where it truly seemed like his heart melted inside his chest. How sweet. he whispered, closing his eyes and shook his head for a moment. What's your morning schedule? Well, I wake up very late, but really, really late. You won't see me wake up before 9 o'clock on a good day. I've been up as late as 5 a.m. in the afternoon. You could only open your eyes in surprise and let him go on. I wake up, eat something, and waste time. I work at night and not every day, so on work days, I can be gone all night and not come back until really early the next day. That's why I'm not an early riser. Don't worry about me wake you up. I tend to be quiet in general. Sometimes when I don't have work, I watch movies at night. But if the noises bother you, I can watch them with low volume. Neat. It gave you a tenderness to know that he cared about your comfort before his hobby. Well, I sleep late. I mean, like, my sleep schedule is all over the place, frick. I also sleep very late at night, so I got no problem with that. Oh, in that case. He shifted uncomfortably and avoided your gaze just a little. It shouldn't happen, but I think it would be better to warn you just in case. And if it makes you not want me as a roomie, I understand. You give him a pointed look, raising an eyebrow. Sometimes I come back a little beat up. So don't freak out. It's just, well, my job can get a little violent. For some reason, him asking you not to freak out gives the complete opposite result on you. You allowed yourself to see his scars again. Would they have all been caused by his job? It's just part of the job. He continued, shaking his head softly, as if he was trying to play it down. Just as a chef can get burned in the kitchen, or veterinarians can get bitten by an animal. Well, that's okay. It's not a big deal. I'm glad it isn't. He sighed, lowering his shoulders. Right, let's continue. You had to take a moment to think about what else to ask him. Kato let out a slight breath with a small laugh that didn't go unnoticed. What's wrong? I just realized that we haven't even touched on the issue of rent prices. We got a little personal real quick, huh? He's right. And more than annoyed, he seemed fascinated by that discovery. Whether you were okay with it or not, you had to put a pause on the information gathering about Kato. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't tedious or uncomfortable either, when you discussed the issue of the rent price and the division of expenses and chores. It was quick thanks to the fact that Kato seemed to agree to whatever you proposed. For a moment, you could almost have been sure that if you had asked him, he would agree to pay for all the expenses and take care of all the chores. Still, you decided not to push your luck. In the end, you realized that he seemed to have read your mind because his expenses were much higher than yours. You pointed it out to him and he simply assured that everything was fine. To make things fair, he would put up the money and you would make sure to pay for the corresponding days, assuring that he was forgetful and so the both of you would contribute something. As for your housework, you decided to use the same plan you had with your friend when you lived together. One would do the general and thorough cleaning, the other would do the grocery shopping and food preparation. Kato let you choose which you preferred to do, to which you responded, I ain't that good at cooking, so it would be really cute to see him, it would be really cute to actually see him in an apron, so cleaning. Once everything was done with his hands, Kato made a ponytail with his hair and let it fall, creating a dark purple waterfall on his back. Don't you have to go? He looked at you, raising an eyebrow. You mentioned you work at night. Oh, yeah. He nodded, twisting a smile mischievously. I decided not to go today. You decided? He blurted out in surprise. He wondered if that was normal for a bouncer, or Kato was just being a rebel. You can do something like that without getting in trouble? His eyes darted to the ceiling for a moment, thinking before he grinned mischievously at you. Maybe I will get in trouble, but it's better this way. Why? Because he can ask me more personal questions now. How personal can they be? Maybe it wasn't that bad that he didn't get to work today. How personal can they be? Not too personal. I still have to be mysterious a little while longer. Of course. You decide to switch seats. You both agreed that the couch was more comfortable, so you got up with your respective cups in hand. You sat down and immediately enjoyed the comfort. The couch wasn't brand new, and yet it didn't feel old or worn out. It was as nice as a bed, which wasn't always a good thing considering all those times you had left your real bed thanks to it being near impossible to tear yourself away from it. Kato, on the other hand, didn't sit with you. At first, it seemed like he would, but at the last second, he made his way to the single individual sofa. And that's definitely because it's much more comfortable and not because it's easier for the developer to draw. It was the same as the couch you were sitting on since they came together, but Kato looked too big for him. His choice didn't make much sense, and yet he smiled warmly at you as he settled in. It was at that moment that you realized that it made sense for there to be space between you, considering you had only just met that day. The only thing you could do to get to know him better was to talk more. Well, what kind of music are you into? I like rock. Mainly the old type, like in the 90s. That ain't that old, Kato. I mean, like, let's talk 70s and 80s music. Like, let's be real. Like, that was peak rock. I do also like the most current version of it, but not as much as the old one. I like that too. I didn't expect that. That makes sense. I like that too. Yeah, I also like that. You were glad. It was always good to have common musical tastes with whom you would share the house. You could avoid fights over the kind of music that's playing around the house. I'd take my hat off before you, he said, taking off an imaginary hat from his head. You have a really nice taste in music then. Right, tell me about your family. Oh, well, I lived with my birth parents for a while, but my parents adopted me when I was 16, I think. Had I already turned 17? That last one seemed more to himself. After a moment, he shook his head. It doesn't matter. My parents are very nice people. Adopted? You're adopted? Yeah, it's a long story. He sighed. He didn't exactly look sad, but you could tell he didn't feel like going into detail. Maybe someday he'll tell you that longer story. You took a moment to look around the house. You wondered what your parents would have thought of Kato. Would they like him? Would they think it was a bad idea for him to live with you? Everything okay? Kato's voice was gentle and soft. My parents died recently. You admitted. Look at the large plants in the corner. Your parents had worked hard to keep it alive after buying it in a deplorable state. I'm so sorry, he whispered, and from his tone of voice, it would almost have seemed like he knew them in life, but it was obvious he was only sorry for you. You were grateful, but you wanted to change the subject. Not yet. There was another line of questioning there. What kind of relationship did you have? How's your relationship with them? I'd say good. We don't see each other too much, to tell you the truth, but my dad texts me from time to time, and my father calls me sometimes. They respect my privacy, and I really appreciate it. You took a moment to look around the house. You wondered what your parents would have thought of Kato. Would they like him? Would they think it was a bad idea for him to live with you? Everything okay? Well, we've already seen all this, so next question. What kind of temperament do you have? Temper? Uh-huh. Do you get angry easily? Do you get sad often? I consider myself calm. I don't know. I think the first impression some people have of me is to be someone explosive or even aggressive, which helps me at work, I guess. You notice how his tone of voice was slowly lowering until the words ran out, and finally he was left thinking and staring blankly. I like his style. I like the style you have. He was visibly pleased. Oh really? In that case, that won't be changing anytime soon. He smiled at you. Right, let's continue. You hold back a yawn. You had no idea what time it is, but you knew it was late. You were starting to get sleepy. Kato, on the other hand, looked energetic. You remembered he mentioned that he tends to sleep late at night, and there was the proof. What comes first, milk or cereal? What's your spirit animal? Do you believe in ghosts? Milk or the cereal? Kato tries to hide his laughter, but in the end, it was almost impossible. He had to stop it to clear his throat, perhaps to avoid coughing. I think you should go to sleep now. I'm not sleepy. His sentence was cut off by a yawn. I think that's my cue. I should leave now, Ulterior. He reached into his pocket, possibly to make sure he had his phone and wallet, and finally got up. You grabbed your own phone and looked at the time. Yeah, it was late. Time has flown by. He looked at Kato, who was looking at you tenderly. Stay. It's late. He pointed, getting up from the couch and heading in his direction. I can take care of myself, Ulterior. I'm going to be fine. He purred in a rather playful, proud tone. But his head tilted to the side as his smile widened. You should enjoy your final night alone. After all, this is your last night without me. I'll come by tomorrow, he assured as he placed one of his hands on your head. Before you could say anything, you saw him lean in to place a kiss on your forehead. It was nice to meet you, Ulterior. Have a nice rest. He was speechless. Maybe because you didn't expect it. Maybe because of how embarrassed you were. And just as he had arrived, he was gone, closing the door as he walked out and leaving you all alone in the house once again. It was a little odd. Now that he was gone, you noticed that Kato had a big presence here, and it had nothing to do with his height. It was actually a little more beyond that. His presence was strong, but without being suffocating. It was actually pleasant and quite calm. You thought it would be nice to have him around more often and couldn't wait for him to move in with you. You yawned and headed to your room, turning off the lights on your way there. Your whole body and brain were asking for a proper rest, and that was exactly what you would give them. Tomorrow, you would see your roomie again. So anyway, that was the official demo for Red Phone. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do want to play this for yourselves, link to the game will be in the description below. It's interesting how this is basically a continuation of the pilot. I thought that that was the demo. I honestly thought that the previous game from this developer was the actual demo, and this was going to be the full game. But it feels like this is being split up into chapters, and I really can't wait to actually see what happens in like day one of this. Like seriously, this is absolutely fascinating. And I can't wait to actually see, like, how absolutely horrifying this gets. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of the day. And, as always, I'll be seeing you in the next video. This is Lion, signing off. Ciao.